guys, long time no see. No, welcome back to my channel. I just wanted to come on and say, first off, I'm sorry again that I've been away for a while. There's been so much happening. I think the last video I actually did was from my nighttime routine, because I wanted to have a little bit of a change from talking about my gastroparesis and things like that. So, but unfortunately, this video is about it again. So I'm really sorry. So much has happened. Like I said, as you know, I've been really struggling since my nasal jejunostomy tube had been taken. I try and drink and I try and eat and I take my meds and blah blah blah, but it causes so much problem for me that it's basically become a chore at this point. Like, I eat because I have to. Like, it's like breathing. You have to eat, but it's become like hoovering my house. You know what I mean? It's become a chore to actually have to do, because it just causes so much problem. But let me just revise back to like December. So as you all know, in December I went to see my gastric doctor, who was wanting to see me about replacing my nasal jejunostomy tube after it got removed in the October, because I'd lost 5% of my body mass, or my body weight, and I'd lost quite a lot of muscle mass from 22.9 to, I think it was either 8.8 or 8.9. I can't really remember, within 5 weeks of my tube being removed. So he wanted to basically do, to give me my tube back, but because of a weight fluctuation of £2, which anyone can do at any given moment or any given time, depending as well on what time of day you weighed, what type of scales you weighed on, etc, etc. He decided to hold off and decided he wanted yet another second opinion, and I've had several over the last couple of years, with regards to what's best for me and my gastroparesis. So and he also wanted surgical input. So he did tell me that it should be a quick turnaround, so I shouldn't be struggling too long. However, this was before Omicron decided to make its ugly appearance and kind of like hammer down on the NHS a little bit more. Now, waiting times for the NHS were already substantially long. And then obviously on top of that, we had Omicron that made things a little bit worse and pushed things even further back. So it's become a challenge. So I had to see a gastric second opinion. But instead of seeing them quite quickly, the earliest I could see them was May, which is fine, but it wasn't fine for me. For the last few months, I've been really struggling mentally, physically, just, it's been horrendous. Like, I had COVID in February after having a 4-week long double throat infection. Sorry, my dogs are barking, so I'm going to take you with me while I let them in. I had a double throat infection in the January, well, from Christmas through till January, and then no sooner did I finish my antibiotics for that, I ended up with a UTI. Come on. I ended up with a UTI. So I ended up on more antibiotics for yet that. So I ended up on antibiotics for my double throat infection. I then ended up on antibiotics the day after I finished them antibiotics for a UTI. And then I got COVID about a week later, because my son caught it at school. So that became a bit of a problem, because then it set off my chronic fatigue. So my chronic fatigue syndrome really flared up. It was terrible. And all I kept on thinking was, all I wanted was my energy levels back. Like, literally, that's all I wanted, was my energy levels back. And when I had my nasal jejunostomy tube the first time, I literally had so much energy that I was able to go to PT. I was able to do my occupational therapy. I was able to do so much. And I was even able to think about what my future might look like when my kids have grown up and they've moved on. Because, you know, I spent a lot of time when I had my daughter studying, going to college, went to university, I had to drop out of university because she became sick. Then I had another child who then became sick because of we were living in a house that had a load of mold in it. And then I had my son, and my son has a kidney condition and obviously has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And since then, obviously, my other two children have been diagnosed with EDS as well. So it's like there's been so much going on that I wasn't able to go back to uni and finish what I wanted to. So I was actually looking at going back to university and everything because I had so much energy. That nasal jejunostomy tube gave me all the fluids my body needed, all the nutrients my body needed. It gave me so much energy back. I have never ever in my entire life felt as healthy as I did when I had that tube, which for people that have tubes will understand what I'm talking about, but for people that don't have tubes, you will have no idea what I'm talking about. But I honestly have never felt so healthy when I had that tube. Originally, I really didn't want it. I tried every prokinetic, every antiemetic, lifestyle changes, dietary changes. I literally tried allergy medications. I tried everything. I'd gone through grueling tests. I'd gone through gastric emptying studies. I'd gone through barium swallows. I'd gone through a multitude of tests to figure out whether there was a way of fixing things. They even suggested a gastric pacemaker, which obviously they don't use on the NHS, but I can't afford privately. And privately, I then got, it costs about 35 grand, I think it is, to implant one. But even then, the NHS don't install them for a reason. And that's because they don't actually there's not a prominent success rate with them, so they don't fully work as well as they'd hope they would, so the NHS doesn't fund them. Anyway, cut a very long story short, I basically cried when they told me that I needed my nasal jejunostomy tube. Like, I literally cried. I didn't want one. I was eating whatever I could that was so bad for me. Like, I was eating cakes, ice creams, you name it, I was eating it just to kind of try and build up a ton of weight on me, just so that I didn't have to have the tube, because I presumed that if I was big and I was overweight and everything, they would not give me the tube. And I was wrong. They still gave me the tube. So I spent like 2 weeks, if not longer. I spent about 2 months on and off crying because I really didn't want the tube. And then eventually I kind of like adjusted to actually having it. And then it kind of dawned on me, like, hold on a minute, I've not had a UTI in a while. My heart's not kicked off in a while. My bladder's emptying better. Like, every single thing that I'd been having trouble with seemed to improve. Like, I wasn't getting the dizzy spells anymore as much as I used to. For my POTS, I wasn't like feeling like sick anymore. Like, everything had changed completely. And I started thinking, you know what, like, I may not like having this tube stuck to my face, and my face was red raw and it was really sore, and I can't have my feeding tube on this side because my nasal septum is too narrow to actually get the tube through. So I can only have it on this side of my face. And I was literally sitting there going, oh my God, like, my face is so sore, but I don't care, because I can literally like have so much energy. For the first time in my life, I felt so well. And I was able to look to the future and think, what do I want to do? And I actually felt so well, and I was doing so well with building up my strength and everything, that with PT and OT, that I decided to apply to be a volunteer at the hospital in order to help them out, because I thought, it gets me out of the house, it's something I can do, I'll start off slow and build myself up, and it helps with PT as well because I can start to move around a bit more. And when I applied for that, I thought my tube was just going to be a permanent thing, and I literally applied, and within 2 weeks of applying, my doctor decided to take it off me. And I thought, hopefully I'll be able to eat and everything will be back to normal and everything will be fine. And I just went downhill so damn quick. I lost my energy, my bladder started kicking off again, my heart was kicking off again. And I've been like this for the past several months, since December, since he said he was going to replace it and then changed his mind. And obviously with Omicron raising its ugly head in December and pushing everything back. the quick turnaround that he was on about didn't end up being a quick turnaround. It ended up being 5 months. 5 months of me sitting here, like, being nauseous every day, being sick, like, in excruciating pain. I have prolapses that I never had previously. I had minor things previously. Now I have full prolapses. Everything was like, it is getting so much worse that I don't have the muscle anymore to hold it there anymore. Like, I don't have the muscle to hold things where they're supposed to be. My hip pain is increased so much that I was supposed to have had an arthrogram scan in October that they messed up at the hospital, because they're constantly messing up at my hospital. They messed up at the hospital and they gave me a standard MRI instead of one with contrast, which is one that's needed, where they have to inject a needle straight into your hip of contrast. And now they're not even booking appointments for that because they are so far behind with MRIs that it's going to take me a really long time to get that scan. And my hip is doing so badly that if my house was bigger, I'd be using my wheelchair 24/7, which I physically can't do, because at Ehlers loss, you have to be as mobile as you possibly can, as much as you can. So walking around the house, I can do just about. I don't go up and down the stairs unless I really have to. Our bathroom's downstairs, so during the day that's easy. And then I do sometimes try, because I don't like leaving my wheelchair outside the shop round the corner, I do try and walk around there with my stick, but it does cause a lot of pain, and I do have to stop and start a lot of the time, because it's just too painful to do it, and I just get too tired and too out of breath, and it's just a nightmare. So since having my tube removed, my health has got a lot worse, and I think it may not have got a lot worse. It may just feel like it's got a lot worse, and that's because it was giving me so much benefit when I had it. But I have lost a lot of muscle. So like, my muscle mass in the November was in the September was 22.9. In the November, in the 5 weeks after my tube was taken, it was 8.8 or 8.9. And then when I had it checked 3 weeks ago, my muscle mass had dropped again to, I think the highest one was 7.4, the lowest was 6.2, and the medium was 6.6. So they went with the medium at 6.6, so it dropped again. My overall skeletal muscle, because I'm trying to walk around as much as possible, had stayed the same. So all of my muscle is literally in my legs. And that's it. So my overall body skeletal muscle stayed the same, but everything else had dropped, which shows that my body is really struggling. So I finally went to see my gastric doctor's second opinion. I roll my eyes because it's not his second opinion. It's his, like, about 5th or 6th or 7th second opinion. And we spoke about a medication that I'd already tried. We'd spoke about a medication that I can't try because of the fact of my heart condition, because it can cause severe arrhythmias. It's actually a medication that's actually been banned in the United States because of how much cardiac problems it causes. And given my family history of high prevalence of cardiac problems, I physically cannot have that medication. So because of that, and given the fact of how much I was struggling mentally, how much I was struggling physically, how much everything has dropped and changed, he basically turned around and said that he was putting me back down to have my nasal jejunostomy tube replaced as soon as possible. Because my weight isn't classed as critical, then he said it would be a couple of weeks. And I said that was fine, and I thanked him. He said, and then obviously when you go and see the surgeons in August, we'll decide on what's the best tube to put in for a more permanent version of enteral post-pyloric feeding. And I just thanked him, and I left really upset, like, but in a happy upset, because as much as previously I didn't want the feeding tube, and I still don't, I know for a fact it's what my body needs, and I know for a fact it's what is going to give me the quality of life back that I deserve. So it's hard to adjust to the fact that as of this Wednesday, cut a long story short, they said a couple of weeks to me, but within 24 hours of that appointment, I had them ringing me up, booking me in for this coming Wednesday. So it's been like a week, literally a week. So I'm getting my tube replaced this week on Wednesday. It's Monday today, so in 2 days. So I'll have Nelly back. I called my tube Nelly because it's a nose hose and it reminds me of a trunk, so I called it Nelly after Nelly the elephant. Anyway, so he said we'll look at a more permanent tube to place in August. However, I am a little bit concerned because like I said, it's a massive thing to adjust to, knowing that as of this Wednesday, my body will never ever be a body without a medical device attached to it from now, like from Wednesday onwards, ever. Because if it's not my nasal jejunostomy tube, it will literally be a jejunostomy tube in my stomach, or a PEG J tube, which will be in my stomach as well. So I'll either have a tube coming out my stomach or a tube coming out my nose as of Wednesday for the rest of my life. Like, not both together, don't get me wrong, it'll be one or the other. But obviously, because of the fact that our hospital isn't a massive hospital, it doesn't have its own tube nurses. There isn't many adults at all in my area that have nasal jejunostomy or nasogastric tubes either, to the point where the hospital's not really familiar with them. They only are trained to give one tube and to place one tube only, and that's a Frecker tube. And there's been a lot of concern over the use of Frecker tubes. In the areas where I live, they've actually stopped using them because of all the problems they cause. Now, for those that don't know about Frecker tubes have two bumpers. One bumper is basically attached to the inside of your bowel to keep it in place in your bowel, and the other bumper is on the top of your skin, on the top of your stomach. And the idea is that the bumper keeps it in place. Now, a lot of doctors and hospitals now have started using AMT tubes, which can be turned into buttons, or LP tubes that can be turned into buttons. And the reason they've started using these is because buttons are less, I wouldn't say medical because they are still medical, but buttons are less, the less hassle than having a long tube hanging out of your abdomen, and they're kind of like more discreet, the less noticed, which is why a lot of people like them. But they also are inserted with a balloon that keeps it in place, so the balloon acts like the internal bumper that keeps the tubes in place. So an LP tube and an AMT tube is basically held into place in your bowel with a balloon. Some of them have bumpers on the top of the skin, which is not an issue, but it's the bumper on the inside of the Frecker tubes which can cause a problem, because they can migrate out of the bowel. They can get kind of blocked between the bowel and the abdominal wall, which then means that it's classed as a what's it called, a buried bumper. So then they have to go back in and remove it. And these are all the problems that can be caused with Frecker tubes. And obviously they're surgically placed, which means that if your tube needs to be removed or changed, then it has to be surgically removed and then replaced with a new one, which means that every time you have to have a tube change, you would physically have to go into surgery and have it removed, and then basically spend a few days in hospital or 24 hours in hospital in order to then come back home and recover from major abdominal surgery every single time. And that obviously causes a lot of scar tissue, it causes a lot of problems to recover, it causes a lot of issues overall, where if you have an LP tube or you have an AMT tube, or even if you've had that changed into a button, you basically, all you do to change the tubes if they become a problem is you deflate the tube and you take it out and you put a new one in and reinflate a tube, and it's like a quick 20-minute procedure and you're in and out in the same day, like within the same hour, you're basically in and out. Where a Frecker tube is a lot more invasive, it's a lot more problematic, and literally it will cause so many problems. And our hospital, as far as I'm aware, unless they've had like updated the research or updated the training, they're literally only trained to give Frecker tubes. And that is very concerning to me, because I don't recover very well from surgery, given the fact that I have classical like EDS, which I don't like using that terminology, so I just say hypermobility EDS with classical crossover. But because I have that type of EDS, I literally don't heal very well from surgery at all. I also have very major complications coming out of anesthesia, and I always end up with my stitches bursting. So if ever there's a problem that's going to be caused with something, it's usually me that it happens to. I think there's also a higher infection rate with the Frecker tubes than there is with the other ones. I'm not really sure. Don't quote me on that because I really don't know. And there's probably people that have got Frecker tubes and been perfectly fine with them, but I really don't feel like a Frecker tube is something that I would want or is something that I would ideally benefit from. Regardless of whether it's a PEG J tube or whether it's a jejunostomy tube, Frecker tubes is all our hospital knows how to fit. So I'm pretty sure that when I see the surgeons for my more permanent tube in August, I'm going to ask them, do they know how to fit LP tubes or AMT tubes? And if they say no, because my overall is to basically, because obviously I've done a lot of research into tubes and I've asked a few people that have already got them and things like that, because I would rather at some point have a button as a tube instead of a long tube that my dogs can pull on or chew on or whatever, or that can catch on clothes. I would literally rather have a button at some point, and a Frecker tube can't be replaced with a button. It can only be replaced with another Frecker tube. So I literally want to have an AMT or have a LP tube placed so that it can be inserted with the balloon as the bumper instead of the plastic bumpers, which means that if I have to change hospital to have my surgery, I will ask my doctor to refer me to a different hospital to place the AMT tube or the LP tube, because I really, 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 really do not want a Frecker tube. Just because I've heard so many horror stories about them, and just because of the fact that they seem to be very invasive if they need chewing. Sorry, this is just my puppy. She's chewing on a toy carrot. So yeah, like I'm literally bricking it about having a permanent tube because of the recovery and everything else, but at the same time it's not the type of tube that I would ideally want. But anyway, sorry about this little munchkin here. She's just had a haircut. People keep calling her a little rat because she's just had a haircut. But look at the long eyelashes. Sorry, just to change the subject. But yeah, like I literally would rather have a ballooned bumper tube rather than a plastic or silicone bumper tube instead. So I'd have to see, but I mean our hospital could have been updated, and to be honest with you, the local area around us has actually stopped using Frecker tubes because of the problems that they cause, and I'm hoping that our hospital has kind of got on top and got on board with the same principle. But anyway, if they haven't, we'll see. I will update you guys when I know more about it. But unfortunately, right now, I'm just anticipating the adjustment of having my nasal jejunostomy tube back as of this Wednesday. And then obviously, from then on, my body will be always have a medical device attached to it. I'm not looking forward to the irritation of nose and throat. That is something I'm not looking forward to. Hello, baby. That is something I'm not actually looking forward to. And I'm not looking forward to the irritation the tape causes, but I've actually gone and bought some clear tape that can go on my cheek first to protect my face because I'm allergic to the glue on the Hyperfix and stuff. Oh, hello. You saying hello to everyone? So yeah, I'm kind of I bought that, and then I've bought obviously I've got my tubey tapes from last time I had my tube, but I'm not looking forward to the irritation. And the tube tape that I've bought, the clear one, it's actually a waterproof one, so it won't come off if it rains or if I go in a swimming pool or whatever. So that's helpful, but it's just the adjustment, I think. But I mean, I'm happy to be finally getting the help that I need, and I'm happy that, you know, I'm finally going to get my quality of life back. That is something that I'm really happy about. And I'm finally happy that something's being done, and it's been done so quickly as well, because I was expecting like a good couple of weeks, and no, they're doing it with like within a week of seeing the doctor. They've booked me in. So I'm just really, really happy that it's been done so quickly. So that's my update. I really hope you're having a really nice Monday, and I hope you have a really good week. I won't be on here. I'll probably come back on and let you know how the placement went on Wednesday, but I probably won't do it Wednesday just because of the fact that I'll be really groggy, because they give me two different types of sedation because one doesn't work. So I always end up with 2 different types of sedation, which knocks me out just enough to kind of understand what's going on, but enough to make me comfortable. They basically spray the crap out my throat as well, which is very helpful, and then they basically put the tube down. So I will come back on and let you know how that went, and I will show you my setup when it's all set up. But for now, thank you very much for watching. I really, really do hope that you're having a very easy week, and that your week, if you have chronic health issues, is a low pain one. Thank you so much for watching if you've got this far. Sorry it's so long. I'm really after going to start doing more frequent videos so that they don't stay as long. But yeah, take care, and I will speak to you again soon. And thank you again for watching. Bye.